What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tribe of Millionaires podcast from GoBundance. I'm your host, Jamie Gruber, and today we had a GoBundance Women's member in the room to speak with on our podcast. Her name is Vanessa Peters. She's a physician out of San Diego, California, originally from Canada, and she moved to much better weather, and she'll talk a little bit about that in this podcast. Vanessa was very interesting to me because she is literally everything. She is a full-time physician, so she has a job. She is a mom. She has a 10-year-old son. She is a syndicator. She invests passively. She's even a pilot. Like, we talked about all these different things that she does, and she does so really by kind of considering what she wants to do and then just taking action, which I thought was a really, really important message throughout the story of this podcast for her, throughout her story, how she would just sort of decide and go and really trust her intuition, something that I know, I don't know that I've done as much as I could have in my life until maybe more recently when I've started to listen to that whisper, that voice that's maybe directing me in the way that I think I should go and not telling it that it's wrong or telling it that it's stupid. She does that, and it seems to pay off for her time and time again, and she's building towards something that she believes will be the better part of her life as she moves forward. So we talk about all of that and so much more. She's closed funds. She has an open fund currently that she's raising capital for. Again, she invests in passive deals, so many different things, so many wisdom nuggets that you'll get out of this particular podcast. Be sure to drop a comment, like this particular episode, and also subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We appreciate your support. And until then, enjoy this interview with Vanessa Peters. Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Absolutely. It's a true pleasure. It's been great getting to know you a little bit before we started recording, but let's go a little deeper. So let's get your backstory, kind of where you're from, and just give us the journey to all of what I just read, how you went from there, wherever you were born and raised all the way up through now. Just sort of go with it, roll with it. And I'll ask some questions along the way.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm from Canada originally. I'm born and raised there. And I did all my schooling up there in mostly Calgary, Alberta, but also at some northern British Columbia for my younger childhood, and then high school, undergrad, and medical school up in Calgary. So my family is still up there, and I decided to move down south to San Diego, where I live currently, when I got out of residency. And the reason for that, many people ask why you moved to the States, and I mean, the weather. It's gotta be the weather. I'm not a big fan of the snow. I love Canada. It's great in a lot of ways. It's beautiful, but I only go back in July and August because that's when it's nice for me. So I moved down to San Diego. I was super excited to get a job down here in Escondido, California, which is like a North San Diego county. When I received the call from the CEO of our medical group at the time, and he told me he was in Escondido, I had like, where is that? I had no idea. So back then, this was 20 years ago, I had to pull out like an atlas and look it up. And I was like,
yeah,
that's San Diego. Okay, that is awesome. And so the day that I came down for my interview, I was flying down in May. I was graduating residency in June. I flew down in May, and we almost didn't make it because there was snow. It was snowing in Calgary in May. And, that just goes to show you what the weather can be like up there. The winters are long and cold. So I have been very happy here in Southern California for the last almost 20 years and practicing medicine. I'm a family physician, and I've been at the same group the whole time. I'm just really loyal to my group, and I enjoy it. It's grown a lot since I started, and now we have 12 locations and 80 providers or so. And I started kind of climbing up the ranks in the group as I progressed, and got on the board and became a shareholder, and now I'm actually the leader of the group. It's like a medical director position called Chief Physician Officer, and so I'm sort of the leader of all of these docs, in addition to having a pretty busy family practice. So, as you can tell, I work hard, and I actually got married in 2000. 2009, and had a child a little bit later than that. And, I was just busy working. But I was talking to my financial planner when I was about 35, and, I realized I was working hard and I wanted to know when I could retire. And I said, sort of like, I'd like to retire when I'm 45. And he kind of smiled and he's like, do you know how much money you're going to need to retire at 45? Like, with a safe withdrawal rate and all that, because right at this point I've got all my money in, 401k, stock market, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, I have no idea. And he's like, well, you're going to probably need about $4 to $5 million. And at that point, I wasn't even an accredited investor yet. So, I had less than $1 million net worth. And I was like, oh crap, that's going to be hard, but I'm determined and I'm going to do it. So over the next, 7-8 years, I just put my nose to the grindstone and saved. I just saved a lot. I saved half of my income. I worked really hard, and I was putting as much money into these, vehicles that were recommended by my financial advisor. And, I was tracking things, but not really closely. And so about 7-8 years later, I look up and finally put things on a spreadsheet and a graph, and I'm expecting kind of like a curve to the net worth, but it was a straight line. And I was really disappointed because I thought that there would be some compounding of my money. This is during a bull market, things are going up. Why is my money not going up in a curved fashion, like an exponential? It's just a straight linear line. And I was crushed, really, because when I looked at my net worth, I realized I was going to be working a long time if I was going to reach that goal that was set for me. And now I'm in my almost 40, and I'm like, well, there's absolutely no way I'm going to get there by 45. And by that time I had kind of given up on the 45 idea anyway. But at the same time, I realized that my son, I have a boy who's 10, he's growing up fast, and here I am working my butt off and kind of being a little bit frugal, and, not wanting to do stuff because I'm trying to save for this, retirement. And we went on a vacation to Minnesota to visit some family, and we were riding our bikes around a lake. And I mean, here in Southern California, we have only a couple lakes and they're really dry, but up there things are completely green and it's really cool. And we're riding our bikes, and it's the trees are overhanging the path, and it's all shady, and I just had this feeling come over me, and I was like, whoa, what is that feeling? And I was like, oh my God, it's contentment, it's happiness. And it was weird because we're just riding bikes, but I was like, that is, holy crap, I don't think I've been feeling a lot of that, and I need to. I think I had been anxious and stressy and working hard and not really taking the time to enjoy my life. I was so focused on a goal that I wasn't really being there. And it's weird how one moment can just shift your life, really, because that one moment made me think I need more fun, contentment, and vacation time or whatever with my family, and just to be happy and do what I want to do and not think about work and money. And that led me down this rabbit hole, which landed me where I am now, which is so strange because I took the experience quite literally and felt that the way to happiness would be for me to buy a house on a lake in California that we could go visit. So I started looking around for real estate in California that had a lake that would kind of be like that. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but I was taking it very literally. And I went to Lake Tahoe. I mean, I didn't go there, but I was looking in Lake Tahoe thinking that's a good lake. Of course, that's a 10-hour drive, right? But I thought, this is how I'm gonna be happy. And that didn't work out for various reasons. That you need special permits to get short-term rentals. And of course, that was the only way I was going to be able to pay for it, was with a short-term rental. And I couldn't get a permit. And so I was like, okay, well, dang it, that's not going to work. But it opened up my idea to real estate and thinking about, you know what? That's right. I read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, way back in the day. And I know that real estate is the way to wealth. And this is the way that I'm going to change my net worth and give myself more freedom. And so it became my absolute mission. I was so laser focused on that. And I didn't stop. I was, like a pit bull. I wasn't going to stop until I found a way to make this work. I had purchased one house in Riverside County, which is just north of here, in 2008 during the downturn, because a realtor, I had some extra cash, and he said, hey, this area, Inland Empire, is going to be hot. You should buy a short sale. And so I did. But I bought just at the beginning of the downturn. And so it wasn't really, it didn't go up for quite a while. And so it scared me. I didn't know what I was doing. If I had done a little more research, I could have bought a bunch of those houses and done very well, because that house has more than doubled now. So, but looking back, I was like, oh yeah, I bought that house. I'm going to do that. I'm going to buy some more houses and I'm going to rent them. And this is going to be perfect. And so this is, like 2015. And the houses in San Diego just don't cash flow at that point either. And I looked and looked at condos and I scoured the area and I just couldn't find anything. And so I was like, I've got to find another way to invest in real estate. I found bigger pockets and I started, going to meetups, and I started meeting other real estate investors, and they were all going out of state and buying single family homes in other markets. That's what California investors do, a lot of them. And I looked into that a little bit as well, but that made me uncomfortable. I didn't really want to own a single family home outside of my state that I couldn't drive to and be responsible for it. And I just didn't think that the dollars were going to make a big difference. Like the $100 or $200 a month just didn't seem like enough to buy a whole house and be responsible for it. So I kept looking and found out about syndications at some point. And that I started reading about it. I met somebody who was involved in syndications, an operator, and I flew out to Dallas and I walked a building. I met the property manager, and I did my first investment in Dallas Fort Worth in a syndication apartment building. And that was when the light bulb went off. I was like, okay, this is going to work for me, because I have capital, I don't have time, and this is a passive income. I also found that during my frantic search for real estate, I was distracted at work. I was constantly trying to find a deal, or I would be on a search and I would get an email every couple of minutes. Oh, there's a new property up. There's a new property. And I was just like getting frazzled, and realized that that's probably not the best thing for me to be doing, A, while I'm at work, and just B, just in general. It's a time consuming activity looking for real estate. And so I started investing in syndications and loved it. I mean, the cash started coming in, and I moved as much money as I could from my traditional 401k to a self-directed 401k. And in the first year, I think I was in like 10, and now I'm up to, as a limited partner, I'm 25. And so I've just really loaded up on syndications. They're not all real estate, but they are about probably 85% real estate at this point. And so, and then I became interested in helping others, because I was really passionate about it and was talking to anyone who would listen, really. And then my one of the syndicators, he said, I have a coaching program. Would you like to join and learn how to do this? And so I did, and began raising capital for deals. I'm too busy to find deals and be an operator, obviously, but I do have a network, and I can teach other busy professionals about syndications and why they're so great and why I love them. And so hence the book and VMD Investing. So I think that pretty much catches us up.
Well, okay. Well, let's try to unpack that, because that catches us up with a lot of things that we could talk about. I want to real quick talk about this Minnesota trip. This interests me. Give me a timeline on that. What that sounds like, about a 2011, 2012. Is that about it, or?
No, that was like 2015.
2015. So your son, I'm going to put him at a 4. See how good I am with
Yep,
that.
4 or 5. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Speak to that a little bit. So you went away on this trip, and you kind of had this epiphany, if you will, and then started taking action toward that. Do you have anything did that teach you anything, or do you, like, for me, I know I learned, when I get silence, when I get time to me, which I never prioritized, it really does unleash just things that I don't realize it will unleash. Have you found that since? Have you had other instances like that, where with space and time, or, time away, where you can clear your brain, things clear up for you and you're able to take action? Is this something you're intentional with? I'm just kind of curious, is it just like, hey, no, I had that time and I've been working ever since? Or is there some intentionality to that now that you've kind of had that epiphany in Minnesota?
Yeah, that's a great question. And absolutely. I've learned that when we stop and listen to ourselves, we have a lot of wisdom inside. And, whether you get that through meditation or walking on the beach or hiking or camping or whatever, you do need that time to yourself. Like a retreat, a journey. There's all types of ways that you can go inward and find out what's inside. And I've done that several times. Absolutely. And I'm in tune with that, and also have made some other decisions that have, turned me in new and different ways also. So I think that our innate messages that we're getting from ourselves are very important to listen to.
No, it's a great point. Yeah, we interviewed Elaine Stoggerberg for this podcast, and I was telling you before, I think you're our second GoBundance Women interview, depending on when these all come out. But and that was something that she shared with you, and I've shared as well. The idea of, she went away somewhere, I think it was Utah, and had this like epiphany clarity moment of just being away and not thinking and looking at cell phones and just the rush of the day. And I had that experience recently on a drive to Florida, just by myself, where it just gave me clarity. I think it's an important point to make. The other part of that I think is interesting is, I talk to a lot of people who, so I run the Emerge and Ascend program, right? These are for future millionaires. And the biggest objection I get before joining a program like that is, man, I'm just so busy. I have so many things going on. I have kids, I have, my job, I have this, I have that. And, you would raise your hand and say, yeah, hey, me too. But my God, you run a practice, a series of practices, it sounds like, a group of practices, I should say. You've got a family, you've got a real estate empire that you're growing, and you continually take action. You mentioned you started going to meetups, Bigger Pockets, flew to Dallas, all this stuff. How you wrote a book about it, for God's sake. So give me a little bit about the busy professional. What are you teaching? What are some things that you think people need to know or understand in order to take action toward the life they want, even though they have a very busy life currently? What's some bits of advice or some thoughts you would give there?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about prioritizing what's important. If you're busy, then you need to look at how you spend your time and where are your time wasters. And if you're spending time, scrolling through Facebook or Instagram instead of doing something productive like hanging out with your kids or, reading something like that could move you forward, that's really important. In terms of getting the life that you want, I really think it's important to have passive income, and that's something that I've known all along. But going from the beginning of my journey in real estate, I wasn't so much focused on income because I have income. I have a job. And so for me, the little bit of money from each syndication wasn't really moving the needle very much. But now that I'm further into it, I've started to shift and pivot my focus, because now it's been 5 years. It's been over 5 years, and I'm starting to see some momentum there and realize like, oh, wow, I need to focus on cash flow. And so cash flowing real estate is make sure it's passive, of course, but that's the way that you can give yourself some time back and give yourself some freedom so that you don't feel like you have to work as hard. So, and then, if you're not an expert at it, which, is why I wrote the book, because not everybody loves real estate like I do. And so you're not going to sit there and comb the internet and learn about it, because honestly, when I first heard the term, it took me a while to figure out what the heck syndication was, And so now the book is just, it's short, and you can probably read it in 3 hours. It's just a primer on syndications and what they are, why they're so great. And I go through 3 different asset classes: apartment, mobile homes, and self-storage. But those are just examples. There's other stuff out there too. And but I start with my story and why it's so important to value your time.
Makes sense. Where can people find the book?
It's on Amazon. It's available on Amazon.
Find it there, and you can pick it up. For everybody out there that's interested. 3 hours. I mean, everybody has 3 hours to read a book. So, although maybe you're a fast reader, I'm a slow reader, so it might take me a little more time.
Well, here, look. It's pretty skinny.
That's good. That's a book, right? It's not filled with a bunch of meat or fat, I should say. It's got all the meat in it.
There's no fluff, right?
No fluff, exactly. That's a better word. Okay, so you've jumped, it sounds like, from the limited partner side to the general partner side. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so give me an idea, and I think you touched on it a little bit. How do you balance that? Because I mean, it's a very different thing from like, hey, I'm going to throw $50,000 into this deal and then collect the check, to, like you said, maybe you're not finding the deals, but you're putting this together. You're raising capital. You're probably hosting the call, I'm sure, or somebody is, to kind of like let investors know what opportunity you have. And you've got 4 funds, 1 active right now. I don't know if 4 closed plus 1 active or one of those is active, but talk about how you balance that. Like, what have you done to create a space in your life to be a general partner to run these deals at this point?
Right. I mean, my goal is financial freedom. So I'm always investing as a limited partner as well, which is why I have like 24, syndications in my personal portfolio. So when I connect with an operator, which there's only maybe 5 people that I work with, 5 different operators, they let me know when they've got a deal and they need some extra capital on the deal, and if I'd like to be part of the GP. So I review the deal and spend some time talking to them, find out if it's going to work for me and my investors, and then I take it to my folks and let them know that there's an opportunity for them. So it isn't passive, that's for sure. And
Sure.
so my ultimate goal is to become free with horizontal income, not with vertical income, as we talk about in GoBundance. I don't plan on switching from being a physician to being a syndicator, in the more active sense, where I'm an operator finding the deal and managing it. So, I do need to be protective of my time. So I did take on 2 deals recently at the same time, and that was a big mistake. I really thought I could do both. I was excited about both, and I just found that over the course of the 6 weeks that the one apartment deal lasted, one was a fund, which was ongoing, and then the apartment deal, I thought, oh, I can do it. It'll be quick. Closing got extended. There was a little bit of a couple drops and some issues with a 1031 investor, and it dragged on, and I got really stressed out. I was like, I don't think I'm enjoying this right now. I've got pressure, and I've got people coming to me and asking me which deal they should go in, and I feel, like I just realized in myself that I need to limit how much time I spend on that. I can't grow this empire and do a bunch of deals at once and be a physician still and work full time and be, a wife and mom. So it's important for me to make sure that my time is well spent and with really good deals that my investors will want. There's no point in taking on something that's mediocre.
Makes sense. I love the through line of your story is that you follow your intuition. It sounds like, right? The Minnesota trip and what it taught you to do, and you took action on that. Like you said, maybe it wasn't exactly buy a lake house in Tahoe as you initially thought, but you went down that path, and then as you worked on this second deal, I like what you said. I'm not having fun, right? Like you're not afraid. It sounds like to pivot or to move or to say, okay, I know where my limits are, and I'm going to respect them. You have your personally set boundaries, which I think is really, really healthy. As a physician, I'm curious about this because I hear a lot of doctors look, we look at doctors as a society, of course, as terms like well-educated, smart, worldly, all of those things, right? But one thing doctors seem locked in on is active income. Like you got to grind, you got to work. Like if you're not working as a doctor, I've seen or heard you can be vilified in your profession. You're sort of stepping out of that. Like, what is that like in your world? Does it create any conflict, the fact that you've got kind of a passive push? People know that, I'm sure, in your world, and maybe you're working less than you did before. I don't know. Like, are you at odds, I guess, with your industry because of the mindset you have in an industry filled with a mindset of you got to grind?
Right. Yeah, physicians in general don't really believe in passive income. They believe in their 401k and the stock market and, working for money, and, they are the ones to make money. Now, dentists are different because dentists can build a practice and it's worth money. And I've known dentists who've sold their practice for 7 figures, and, and it's pretty amazing. We don't have that opportunity as physicians to sell practices. So we really are limited to what we are, RVUs, which is your relative value units, which is like you perform a procedure or you see an office visit and then you get paid a certain number. And
yeah, you eat what you kill, right?
That you eat what you kill, and that's exactly what you do. And all of us in our group are on productivity, which means there is no salary, which means there is no paid time off. Like if you work for somebody like Kaiser, you probably do have paid time off. But in a private group like mine, which is physician owned, yeah, you don't come to work, you don't get paid. So, we don't call in sick, we don't take our vacations, we work really hard. And the fact that I'm doing this passive income, it lights a fire in some docs, and others are like, no, that's not for me. I'm not interested in anything that's outside of that little box of what the financial advisor tells you. Now, I'm not really working less yet. And so I think when that time comes, I don't feel like I'll be, well, I do believe that the senior part of my group would not appreciate it. And I do have an internal struggle with that, because not only letting down my group by working less, but it's an internal struggle, and it's an identity. So when you go from being a working physician to working less than full time, and that used to be a big no-no in my group. When I first started, you had to be 100% full time to be a shareholder. Now you don't. We've brought on women primarily who want to work part time at 0.5 or 0.6, and I'm so happy that I've seen that shift. But the idea of not being a practicing doctor anymore is scary. It really is. And that's one of my main struggles, because I'm working super hard to get to that financial freedom number, but I don't know what the heck I'm going to do when I get there. I don't know if I'm actually going to do it or not. So
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I get, trust me, look, you don't know my story. I've shared it a few times, but I left an executive position a few months back to pursue what I view to be my passions in real estate, as well as, the Emerge and Ascend program that I built with GoBundance. And to your point, it took a lot of energy and effort, 21 years in one profession with one company, growing through the ranks and being embedded in that culture to disconnect, not just physically from it. That's the easy part, but my identity from it. Like, that's who I was. I still feel that way to some extent. Like I see certain people that I worked with, commenting on things that I might post or that follow up with me. And I feel this tinge of judgment, if you will. And it's not on them, it's on me. But to your point, you're so immersed in what you're doing that separating your identity from it is very difficult. So it is interesting to me to hear that, because I've heard that from a lot of the docs in GoBundance on the men's side, that, yeah, they're the senior partners or the people who, run the practice. I don't know that world well enough to use the right terminology, so apologies. But really, really do look down on some of these guys who have got to the point where they built passive income that allows them not to have to work as much. One guy I know had more days off last year than he worked, and he's like, I mean, it's like he's taking bullets every day that he's at work, because, how dare you, almost kind of thing. Where's that? Where's that from in the doctor community? Is that just an old world mindset? Like, how does that come about?
I think it's the hard work ethic of the doctors. And also, if you're not there, somebody else is going to have to pick up after you. And that's a big part of it. In the old school, you would be available every day for your patients, and in my world, not exactly, but 5 days a week, absolutely. As a family medicine physician. As a specialist, though, we have a general surgeon that used to take call every day, and we expected him to be available on weekends, and then we got another general surgeon, and he's like, no, I'm taking vacation and I'm not available on nights and weekends unless I'm on call. And we were even judgmental of him, like, hey, you're not available when my patient has an appendicitis. Come on, I have to call the other guy. And he pushed back. And I think it's very old school to feel that you need to be there all the time for your patients. And also the patients push back. So I take a vacation, I come back, and then I hear, I had this or that and you weren't here. And they whine and complain that they had to see somebody else. Well, I'm glad that you like me and you wanted to see me, but I have a life too. And so there's a definite guilt, I think. That's a big part of it as a family doc anyway, because we see patients long term. I feel like the docs who have shift work and less attachments, like ER and hospitalist doctors who just see patients inpatient, they can pick up shifts, and shift work is completely different and much more free in my mind, because you can say, you know what, I'm not going to pick up any shifts for a month, and nobody's going to care. Everybody's getting paid. But when I'm not in the office, there's stuff coming in, and that stuff needs to be dealt with, and somebody else has to do it, and they don't get paid for that. So that's, I think, where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah, it's hard work to get to where you are as a doctor, right? That the schooling and residency and everything else that you go through. So it does become an identity, where that identity of being a doctor is ahead of humanity. It sounds like like you said, I go away for a week. It's like people forget at all angles, patients, other docs, specialists, whatever that are around you, forget that you are still first a person who has human needs. And then second, you are a physician there to attend to others and serve as you do and as you have for the last 20 years. So great story. And by the way, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention something. as the leader of the group, I promoted a sabbatical policy recently. And so this was a kind of a big deal for me because I felt like it would really help as I'm going through personal development and, passive income. I thought, it would be really great if we were able to allow our docs to take more time off as a sabbatical. And we instituted it. It's a 8-week sabbatical with a small stipend, so not full pay. And you can take one every 5 years as a shareholder. I think it went into effect in January of 2020, so right before COVID. And so nobody has signed up for it yet. And I'm going to be the first. I think I'm going to do it next year in around this time next year to go to Europe with my family and do kind of an extended trip. And it's, even though I'm the one who promoted it, I'm still scared to do it. That's a long time away from my job. And I'm also scared about, I'm scared it's going to change my focus and be like, oh my gosh, I want to travel more and retire more, so it's nervous. It's a little bit, makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great pod discussion for accountability for you to make sure that you do it though. Right? Because it'll shift your identity potentially. That's scary, but that fear is probably what's best for you to experience, right? Because that's where we grow. Whenever we have that, when we're in that moment of fear, we grow. So good for you. That's amazing that you advocated for it, and then that you'll be the first to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's another intuition thing that I can see my son's growing up fast, and he's old enough and strong enough to walk and carry his own bag, and it's not going to be long before he's a teenager. And it's just like I feel this pressure of like, this needs to be done.
Good for you. Good for you. That's amazing. I was going to say earlier, by the way, I was just looking over my notes before we pivot over to some of the one sheet questions. Your move for weather couldn't have worked out any better. I mean, I don't know that there's a better weather situation than San Diego if you're moving from Canada to the United States. I mean, if you move to where I'm in Michigan, maybe it's like, it's slightly better. You get an extra 30 days of decent weather, but San Diego's a heck of a spot. So good for you for finding a really beautiful spot in the country to go.
Thank you.
Of course. So, all right, let's jump over to the one sheet. We've got these different pillars that we're going to dive into, starting with horizontal income. And let's just start there. You mentioned 24 different syndications. And I don't know what you consider to be horizontal versus vertical income on your general partner side, but just generally, what do you consider your yearly horizontal income to be, and what are those lines? How many lines is that?
So my horizontal year to date is 230,000, and so that's this is my quarter 3 sheet, so that's half the year. Yeah. So I don't think it'll double. I wouldn't extrapolate it that way because I did have an exit from a syndication. So that kind of inflated that number a little bit. That is passive income, but I could exclude it and that would bring it down to more like 129.
Yeah, no, I
How many lines
as well? So
you do?
ahead,
okay.
Yep.
No, so lines of income, there's book proceeds, syndication distributions and exits. And then I have some short-term rentals. So I'm not sure if that belongs in horizontal, but that's where I'm going to put it. That's what the IRS says it is. So
where, if you don't mind me asking, where are the short-term rentals?
I have a short-term rental in Maui and also one here locally in Carlsbad, which is in San Diego.
Beautiful. Are these condos or are they houses, individual?
Condos.
Condos. That's awesome. That's short-term, such a great game. I'm not in there yet, but maybe one day. You never know. What percentager are you at this point?
You mean the financial freedom percentage?
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Well, when I did this, and honestly, just a quick backstory, this is my first true one sheet that I did. And I've been part of GoBundance for several years. And I'm a bad member, I guess. But when I started digging into it, I was like, I have no idea what my horizontal income is. And I had to unravel this sweater to figure it out because I have a couple short-term rentals. I've got everything going into a business account. It's, it's making money, I figure. I don't have a bookkeeper. So I had to get QuickBooks and Stessa and really figure it out. And that took me months to do that. So it took a whole quarter practically for me to get this done. And I just finished it a couple of weeks ago. So I filled it all out and I was like, my financial freedom number is 1.38. And I was like, no, that's not right. That can't be right. but it is. And I'm like, what? Now for my 2021 goal, it's 0.99. So
Okay.
I'm closer than I think, I guess.
Yeah, very good. I'm just curious real quick, you do a lot of things. Do you have assistants? Do you hire anything out? Do you have some who's in your life? You mentioned your network earlier around the syndications, but like you unraveling versus a bookkeeper, fundraising versus an asset manager or a fundraiser that you bring on your team and maybe give some equity to. Do you have people in your life, or are you just doing all this?
That's a good question, and I'm doing most of it myself. Yeah, when I was getting my website up and running, getting on podcasts, I had a VA for a while, but unfortunately, I am doing it all myself. I do think a bookkeeper would be a good idea.
No, it's just an honest question, because I'm more amazed by how much you're able to accomplish being a full-time physician, a mom, a syndicator. I know the passive deals, you put money in, you get money back, but there's still research and everything else you have to do there. You're building your network, you're writing books, you're speaking, you're doing all this stuff. It blows my mind. Is there sleep involved, or do you just kind of cut that part out?
No, sleep is super important. I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night.
Good for you. Good for you. I love that. It's amazing to me. Amazing. But definitely maybe a couple who's in your life. It sounds like it, like a bookkeeper here, or whatever the case may be, would be good for you. How would you break down your net worth from an asset allocation perspective? Is it like all real estate? Do you have some stock, crypto? Like, what are you, just kind of an idea percentage wise, how you would break your net worth down generally?
Yeah. So I would say about, if you looked at my portfolio, it's actually down to about 55% real estate right now. And then I've got in stocks, like my 401k, I think that's sitting at about 17%. And then I've got a lot of other stuff that I learned about recently. So a whole life insurance policy, some life settlements, which is buying life insurance policies when you get the death benefit when someone passes away, and venture capital, and some precious metals. Crypto is something that I'm learning about, but I haven't done yet. So those are the major categories.
Very cool. No, that's great. No, I appreciate that. That's a great breakdown. Let's jump over to Age-Defying Health. Tell me about diet and exercise. Where if you can exercise, if there's time for it, where do these fit in, and what does that routine look like?
I try to walk. That's my favorite exercise, is to get up early and go for a walk in my neighborhood. And I love to go to the beach, and when we have a chance, getting out of town and hiking, things like that. So not a super vigorous exerciser. I used to be really into yoga, but it's fallen by the wayside a little bit now. But I do try to get moving, and I realize that a lot of my best ideas come when I'm walking, and I also love to listen to podcasts and books and talk on the phone. It's just a great thing. I really wish, I think I'm going to put an idea out there to do walking meetings at work, because, we sit in front of the computer so much at work, and it would be just great to be able to move and talk at the same time.
That's a great point. I like that. What about diet? Do you focus on anything specific within your diet routine?
I go through phases. I've done keto pretty hardcore and done well with it, but just can't stay on the wagon. It's just really hard to keep it up. And I tell patients all the time, I'm like, you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out of keto. You got to be all in or not, because if you mix fat and carbs, then you're doomed. So I try to eat a green smoothie every day for breakfast. And I do intermittent fasting. That's the best trick I have, is intermittent fasting. So if I can just skip breakfast and wait until noon to eat, then I can eat a varied and healthy diet in there, with lots of fruits and veggies, but not being super restrictive.
Gotcha. Love it. No, I appreciate that. Let's jump over to the relationship side. Tell me a little bit more about your family. You have a 10-year-old son. I'm assuming you're married at this point, or no?
Yes, I am married.
What's your husband do?
My husband is a musician, and he's trained through a music school in college, and was a performing musician for many years with multiple bands traveling the world. So he's very well traveled, but and spent a lot of time in Hollywood and Venice. But moved back down here to Escondido around the same time I moved down here, and then we crossed paths and then got married. So he has been being the stay-at-home dad, primarily in our relationship, which is why I can do what I do, honestly. But he's doing his album, so he's not contributing financially, but he contributes in many other ways.
Yeah, no doubt. What did he, guitar, singer? Like what did he do? Or what
Guitar
does
is
he do?
his
Sorry.
instrument. Yeah, guitar is his instrument that he trained on, but he's pretty good at almost everything.
Very cool. That's awesome. I wish I had more of that music in me. So you got the
Yeah,
art to your science. He offsets the relationship in that way. I love that. That's great.
absolutely.
How about your life happiness index? Do you know what that is, and what area are you working most on in that?
Yeah, my life happiness index was an 8. And I think that I'm working on a couple things. One is my health in terms of just losing a few pounds. Sugar is sort of my downfall. And
Mhm.
so that's where I'm, working on and getting exercise in more. I'm healthy, otherwise. I'm also working on getting more fun in my life. And so, I just did a retreat this weekend, and that came up over and over again, that fun is something that I am not naturally inclined towards. And so I'm very task oriented, goal oriented, write lots of lists and feel good. I feel good when I'm productive, and I like to be productive and do stuff. If I have a day that's empty, I get a little bit like unsure of myself. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm wasting time, So I'm going to be intentional about really putting a little bit more levity and fun, and especially with my family, trying to lighten up a little bit and not be so task oriented.
I love that. It's funny because like when I left my job, I assumed that would be freedom of time. I had my job, big job, right? 150 people in my organization, all these different levels and responsibilities. So that took a lot of time in my week. Then I had my multifamily business. Then I had my communities. Then I had my family and all the other, like you said, you just like, and I, same thing every week. I still do go out, plan, check off lists, all that stuff. And it's great. Those little endorphin hits, right? They feel amazing just to kind of get things done. Then when I left the job, I was like, all this time, even if I only devote, 20% of it to all this other stuff, I can make this other stuff grow and I still save time. But conditioning, 20 plus years going, like I filled my time more since leaving the job than before it. So warning for you, whenever you do decide to make that move, it's not going to be as simple as you think of just like, oh, extract these 50 hours and I have 46 free hours because I'm only going to take 4 and devote them here. Like you
Hmm.
feel the need, like you said, like I have an empty space in my calendar. It's like I get anxiety around it. Like I got to do something. I have to be productive. And I don't know, maybe over time I'll learn that, but I don't think you can truly get that until you make the leap. I mean, it's like anything. You can't know what it's like to have a kid until you have a kid. You can't know certain things until you do it. And you just have to
Yeah.
kind of make that leap, know that you're going to get uncomfortable whenever whoever decides to do it.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm still in the beginning stages of it. Hopefully figure it out over time. So we'll see what
Wow.
happens. But
Good for you.
interesting. Interesting. And the sugar thing, by the way, yeah, I mean, it's like crack to me. I mean, no sugar today. Here's a muffin. Okay, thank you. Like just like that. So I'm with you. I'm with you completely. How about genuine contribution? Do you have a give back ratio or an amount you want to give that you give annually, or a target? Anything you want to share in the give back department?
I am a board member on a charity called Interfaith Community Services, and they provide assistance to people who are homeless, helping them get back on their feet. And so it's a local charity to my town, and I did want to give back locally. So I do spend a fair amount of time doing that.
That's awesome.
Looks like my goal is 100 hours this year to
Mm.
give back, and then I donate money as well. But I'm not sure how much that will be.
I love that. That's great. And how about on the accountability side? Do you have a GoPod, and
Mhm.
what are you currently talking about in your GoPod?
Yes, on in the GoPod, I have a great group of ladies, and we meet every 2 weeks for an hour. And we usually we go around, do highs, lows, and intentions, and then we pick a topic, whether it's sharing a one sheet, talking about crypto, or talking about diversifying your portfolio, just something that we know internally, to we'll talk about relationships, we'll talk about masculine versus feminine energy,
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff. We have some powerhouses in our pod.
Pretty cool, right? When you just, yeah, sometimes it doesn't have to be overly formatted. Some pods I know are like, 5 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that. And our pod, the same thing. We just kind of deep dive a topic, just rally around something maybe somebody's struggling with sometimes. And you just grow over time. It takes time to do it, but that's great.
Yeah.
How about coming up? You have some, besides maybe next year, the 8 weeks, any other adventures planned? Anything that you have coming up? Anything fun?
Let's see, adventures. Okay. I am going to visit my Maui condo for 2 weeks in August. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
The first time I visited, it was the first time I had been there. We went in April because of COVID. I couldn't go at all for the last year and I hadn't seen it in person. So it was great to get there, but it was a working vacation. We did a lot of cleaning and furniture and stuff. And this time it's going to be fun. So I'm really looking forward to spending a lot of time in the water and walking on the beach and doing adventures in Maui. Also, I'm a new pilot, and so I am working on my skills and want to fly to Santa Barbara and to Catalina. So those are two kind of a little bit farther than my normal comfort zone areas that I'd like to fly to.
So many layers to you. My goodness, the pilot thing now, everything. That's a whole other line of questions.
That's my new passion. Yeah, that's fun.
I just love that you follow them. That's what I love about you. You're inspiring me in that. Like you hear something and you go, right? That's kind of your story, your DNA. You hear something inside and you go. I'm sure that was the decision to become a doctor or to pivot to real estate or, like you just said, I want to learn how to be a pilot. Boom. You just go, and that's cool.
Pretty much it. Actually, it was about a year ago today that I decided, because I was chatting with a potential investor and I just, one of my favorite parts about the VMD investing is chatting with people and just getting to know a new investor. And he said, I'm always interested. What do you do? Where are you? What is your family like? And he said, oh, well, I live in Colorado and I'm a pilot. And also IT guy that buys and sells businesses. And, he's like, I'm like, oh, you're a pilot. That's really cool. Tell me about that. I kind of always wanted to do that. But I think I'm a little old and, it'd probably take a long time and be super expensive. And he just he picked up on that and he was like, no, it's not that expensive. It won't take you that long and you're not too old. And this is how you do it. First, you get started by going to this local school and taking a discovery flight and see if you like it. And I was like, oh. And that just put the seed in my head. And I went to my husband. I'm like, I think I want to do this. And he's like, okay, we'll go for a discovery flight. And then before you knew it, I was taking lessons. And, a year later, I've got my license.
Amazing.
Actually, wow. 6 months later. And yeah.
Amazing. That's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. That's like I said, really inspiring. I love that. I love that part of your story, the drive and just the what's the word I'm looking for here? The accomplishment, right? That's kind of your word. It feels like accomplishment. You think, you see, you do, and that's it. All right, let's jump into our final question from the GoBundance card deck. This is a random question. I told you I would ask and did not tell you what it was at the very beginning. So it's the 10 of spades. And the question is, if time and money were irrelevant, what would you do with your life?
Wow.
Told you it was good.
That's great. Because I was actually just asking myself that very same question this past weekend, and I wrote it in my journal. What would you do if, my question to myself was, if money was no issue, what would you do? And I struggled to answer that. I like, the story I tell myself is that I would travel, because that's been we went to Europe, we went to Italy 2 summers ago before COVID, and I got the bug because I had never been overseas. I was so goal oriented coming out of college. I didn't take any time to travel, just jumped right into school and then boom, 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 working, like many of us. And it was my first time over there. And I was like, there's a big world out there and I want to see it. And so that, I feel like, is what I would want to do. I would travel and fly places and have fun, and spend time being healthy, making my own meals, eating healthy. This retreat I went to this weekend was at a farm, and they served these amazing food because they have chickens and other animals. And I mean, I know that's a lot of work and it's kind of a romantic notion, but the idea of just being able to spend more time on your diet and being able to get up and leisurely, exercise without having to rush off to work. I think just being focused on relaxation and fun and adventure, especially the adventure part of it. That's, I think, what I would want to do.
I love it. It is a hard question to answer. The other one is, if there's a similar question. I can't remember, but I was asked it too, and it does. You think it would be a simple answer, but it makes you think, like, what would I do? Like, what specific? Like you said, you travel. Sure. I mean, I would love to do the same, but then what do I do with that travel, or when I'm traveling, or how long will that satisfy me? And then, like, what would I do after that? You know, it's a tough question to answer. So I was curious I thought maybe you could enlighten me more, and you did. I think that's a great point. Have fun.
You know, I think the other thing is that, like, I've never traveled for very long. And so I was telling my husband last night when I was sharing this with him, I'm like, you know, I think I want to travel, but I'm also attached to my bed and my pillow. So, you know, I'm not 20 anymore. You know, I don't know how comfortable I would be if we went to some, you know, really rural place, or, you know, on the sticks, and how adventurous am I really? And so I think that's something I just have to find out, you know, how will I travel? Will I miss home? Will I want to come back after 4 weeks? I don't know. So
fun in the exploration. We did a month in Florida. It was the longest I had traveled. Actually, my pod held me accountable to that. And it's funny. 2 weeks in, we were ready to leave. And then after the third week, we settled back in. It was almost like we had to go through, like, okay, 2 weeks was our limit. But we had to be there. And then by the end of the third week, it was like, okay, like we sort of let that go, and we were comfortable again, if that makes any sense. And then, I mean, we were good by the end of that time that we left. It wasn't that same urgency at week 4, though, that it was at week 2. It was an interesting find. But anyway, this was amazing. Thank you so much for all of the information and for filling me in on all that you're doing. How can people find out more about you? You have a fund that you have open. Anything you want to kind of talk about right now, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, my website is vmdinvesting.com. And you can get a hold of me through there. I have a legacy club, which you can sign up for, that gets you on my list so that you can be aware of any new deals that I send out. If you're lucky, you might get a newsletter once a month, but I don't send frequent emails. And I do have my book on Amazon, The Busy Professional's Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing. And you can email me directly at vanessa@vmdinvesting.com. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I do have an open fund, which is called Rockstar Capital Fund 2, and it's a land entitlement fund. It's a $50 million raise, and we opened it just last month. So it's in the ramping up phases right now, and it's a pretty cool fund. It's basically getting land ready for the national home builders to build. So taking raw land, getting it shovel ready or permitted, and that process is a very detail-oriented and boring process that the operator is doing, and they're good at it. They know what they're doing. So we're lending money to that operator to do that, and then we're paying our investors. We're targeting 8% preferred and another 8% in profit sharing. So about 16% cash flow.
That's incredible. That's awesome. That's a nice size fund too. That's a good raise. I mean, on top of everything you're doing, unbelievable. You're unbelievable. I mean that. So thank you so much again, Vanessa, for all that you've talked about today. I appreciate the time with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know down in the comments, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can be informed on the next episode and other content right here on this channel. Thank you.